career with a 3 ERA.
And 0 for every game that mattered.
Yes, and that's why you warn people like, Aaron Rodgers and people of that stature that come to this city. Mark Messier, somebody compared that to Aaron Rodgers coming here and trying to do with the Jets that, Mark ended up doing with the Rangers. I mean, it can go south on you pretty quickly. And, and people here, if you just looked at the numbers, you would say, man, he was a great pitcher for the Mets. But then when you look deeper into the numbers and you look into into the areas where he failed, then you understand why the Met fans were booing him yesterday.
Mercenary pieces of craps.
Yes. So, okay, all right. So I wasn't planning on going here to start the show, but you're right. And I'll always go back to the game you took me to last year, Mets-Yankees, when Scherzer's on the mound and pitched amazing.
Yes.
And the place was electric. And the Mets were in the midst of what was going to be a 100-win season. The problem for Max Scherzer, when you look at last year through even the middle part of August, everybody was loving the signing of Max Scherzer. It was everything that the Met fan wanted. It was everything that Jacob deGrom, you kind of knew what was going on there, and the Mets needed an ace to step forward, and he was that guy. And then came the series with Atlanta. And then came the playoff game against San Diego. And then came games this year against Atlanta. Important games. And he was 0 for important games here.
I would say that, Carmelo got the team to the playoffs, but Carmelo was kind of in that vein, although Carmelo was here longer. And there was a lot of change around him while he was here that affected who he was as a player. There's no question about that. But that was a celebrated, I came here and I was hoping to have great things happen, and things went to hell in a handbasket relatively quickly. And you just hope that when you do sign here and you sign a big contract and you are acquired in a big trade, that you can live up to the expectations that are being placed on you. I did 2 interviews yesterday in regards to Aaron Rodgers going into this season. And I said, look, we all know that the physical tools are there. We see them. You can see him in practice doing things that very few players at our position have ever been able to do. He is an amazing thrower of the football. I mean, it's like poetic motion when he is playing at the top of his game, and he's smart and he sees things. And he's at a point in his career now where he's 40. There's nothing that a defense can do to him that he hasn't already seen. And he can play so fast with this group of kids because his mind will be so far ahead of everybody else's on the field. So he should have a lot of success, assuming he stays healthy and everybody around him, including Dalvin Cook, does their jobs and plays up to what the expectations are. But when all of a sudden those expectations aren't met, then that's when the fan here and the fan base here is bright for every team. They go deeper into the numbers. They look at the failures and they try to find where, you either deserve the hands or you don't. And watching this last night at Citi Field, I didn't know. I had really mixed emotions because there was a point in time, I think it was last year, where I loved Max Scherzer. And I loved what he brought to the team.
It was last summer.
And I loved the bulldog mentality and the leadership and all of this stuff. And I thought he was going to basically raise everybody's level. But you're right. When he came to those games against Atlanta and San Diego late in the season and in the playoffs, it was no-show city. And that's what you heard last night.
Well, and not only that, Boomer, but also we can look at this season. The expectations for this season were, all right, last year they made the playoffs, they won 100 games. This year it was Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer, here we go. And the Mets are going to win the World Series because they've got the lineup to do it. The pitching is set up. And what happened is how many games did he not pitch well in when they needed him? He wasn't here. He was injured. And when he was back, he wasn't very good. Yeah, he had some good 5 and 6 inning games. Not good enough. Not
I know.
And the expectation you talk about.
And he also got suspended. That fiasco, which is not something to take lightly. He did something that was against the rules in baseball, and they kicked him out of the game for 10 games.
And I think most Met fans, that's the last thing that they're worried about.
But I'm saying
think about the other stuff.
But it's a part of the story.
It is.
It is a part of the story. And, the other thing is, this year, of course, with Justin Verlander not starting the season.
Killed him.
I killed him as well.
So that's the whole thing about when you look at, and that's why the whole video, and I heard, Fliegelman and Pete talking about it at the end. They're right. Like, what are we doing? The guy was here for a year and a few months, and we're doing video tributes. And then to make it even more awkward, they have the camera right on him in the dugout. They put him up on the big board so that the fans can just boom. Maybe that was the point. Maybe it was actually, you know what? Here's your pound of flesh. I don't know.
I'm also with those guys. I mean, the guys that you give, homage to or pay homage to are guys who spent 10, 15, maybe even longer years with that team, or they do something so spectacular when they're here in the short period of time, like lead a team to a championship and be the reason for that.
Sure.
Then that's a completely different set of circumstances. I mean, I didn't think that Max Scherzer deserved that last night. He's a Hall of Famer. I'm sitting here telling you, here's a Hall of Famer. And they gave him a tribute last night. For what?
Right, for being here for 5 minutes.
I mean, it's ridiculous.
I completely agree with you.
I mean, sometimes the Mets can't just get out of the Mets
But it's
way.
not just the Mets.
I just don't know what it is.
It's not just the Mets. They all do it. They do. The Knicks have given video tributes to guys that don't deserve video tributes. The Nets have. I don't know if the Yankees have or not, but a lot of teams do this.
Max Scherzer basically signed probably about $120 million worth of contracts from the Mets. That's how you say thank you.
Yeah.
By the amount of money that you're paying a guy.
And to be fair to him for a moment, he did talk to reporters before the game, said, all the right things, really had very good things to say about the Mets. So it's not like he's an angry person, and nor should he be, since he got paid a fortune. And
he didn't leave in a bad way.
Right. And they sent him to a really good team to where he's got a chance to win. So there's no reason for him to be upset. The whole thing, though, was just silly last night. And then you put him in that situation. One other thing with the Mets before we move on. You see the Edwin Diaz stuff?
Yes.
So Diaz throws the bullpen, and I know the Mets season is over at this point, not statistically, but it's over. Diaz, who has not been there all year because of the knee injury from the stupid celebration with the World Baseball Classic, told us when this happened and when he got the diagnosis and the surgery that in 6 months he wanted to be ready to throw. And he had a bullpen session. He was throwing in the low 90s on Sunday, and he really wants to get out there at least one time in a game this year. Which is interesting to me, just because I thought when he said that initially, I still thought the Mets would have a good season. The Mets have not had a good season since June, and things have spiraled out of control. And I sit there and wonder, all we ever do, I don't, but most people sit there and try and keep guys out of harm's way. Is that the smartest thing, to go out there in a meaningless game in September? I think
if he wants to play, let him play. He's a professional baseball player. If he's totally healthy and he has a green light to go out there and play, let him go play. Who cares?
Well, I'm with you on that. Most people would sit there and say, why are we doing this if you're going to jeopardize next season you fall the wrong way?
He wants to play. And if he's okay and they green light him and his arm is up to, going out there and throwing 11, 12 pitches, let him go.
Let me ask you this, because this has also been a topic just on him. Now that we have the entire scope.
Maybe if we had him on the mound last night, we wouldn't have lost.
Well, probably. That's probably true. And that's kind of where I'm going here. So now you've had the entire scope of what has happened through the season, as we're now it's almost September. So you've got the whole season you can look back at. And there are those that will sit there and tell you the season ended on the day that he jumped and landed on the guy's foot and tore up his knee or whatever. To which I think is crap. I think the season ended because Justin Verlander couldn't pitch early on, because Max Scherzer wasn't great early on and didn't finish games. I don't think the bullpen was the reason for it. And I thought June was where the season ended because they couldn't hit the damn baseball.
I know. But I would also equate.
Do you think the season's different?
I think the secret, you lost your best player. You're one of your best players, maybe one of your most important players, especially with his performance last year. There's no question in my mind that David Robertson, while he did well in his instead,
look what happened in Miami to him.
I know, but now all of a sudden he's falling apart. But
yes, he has.
There's no question when you lose a player of that magnitude that early before the season even starts in that way, it's going to have a mental effect. And then you couple that with a lack of hitting. You couple that with Justin Verlander not starting the regular season, and the rest of the rotation was just like blah.
Right, but it's more like a chain reaction of a lot of different things. And it started with Diaz, there's no doubt. But this team, remember the West Coast trip, how well they were playing? it's not like they couldn't win ball games. It was June. That June swoon just buried them.
Something was off. And, and everybody, and even Max said it yesterday, felt like they had a great clubhouse. I don't know if he's hiding anything, but everybody seemed to really enjoy, what was going on, before the season started. They had high hopes, just like the Jets have high hopes.
There's no question. And different, though, too, I think, because the Mets season with the high hopes, that would be like having it would be like Garrett Wilson getting hurt now and not playing, the Diaz thing. I guess you could attribute that similarly if something like that happened.
Well,
because right now there's no reason to think, and we'll get into the Jets clearly throughout the course of the morning with the Giants and the NFL stuff. There's no reason to think that the Jets season won't go well. And the same thing in February with the Mets. There was no reason to believe that the Mets would have a season like this until the Diaz injury. And I was sitting here, I'll never forget, I was sitting here with Sal when it happened, and you guys were out, and he just lost his mind that the season was over because Diaz got hurt, which I didn't agree with.
Well,
clearly I was wrong.
Maybe he was right. Well, last year, Sal basically gave the division to the Mets.
He did do that, yes.
In the middle of the summer. That was
May,
wrong.
actually.
May. All right, well, that was wrong. And now this year, he was right. So I don't know what else to tell you. This is the job that we live in. Every now and again, we hit a home run, and every now and again,
we're wrong.
We create an error.
No doubt. And last night was kind of a microcosm of what the season's begun. What the season's been. That they blow the game at the end. Not enough offense. Pitching was good enough. They don't win.
And then, of course, Severino comes back for the Yankees, and this is 2 good starts in a row for him. But then again, it's the lowly Tigers and everything else. So what do you take from that?
Exactly. Like his last 2 starts have been the Severino they re-signed,
which is good. But for him as an athlete, what's going on with him right now? It is all about getting his confidence back. It's all about seeing whether or not they believe that he can be a part of this thing in the future. That's why he's on the mound.
Yeah,
and that's why he's going through what he's going through. And I think everybody, I genuinely watching them last night in the locker and the dugout. Genuinely, everybody is really happy for him.
Yeah, well, you're pulling for a guy who has struggled horribly all year long.
But the last 2 outings, this is the Severino that they would hope they were going to see the entire season.
No doubt. And I think it was, and CBS Sports Network just played a great package of many of his strikeouts. There was one, though, that wasn't in there. I was all over the place last night, watching one Jets drive, bouncing back between the Mets and the Yankees. And at one point I watched, I think it was the 5th inning, I'm not even sure. But it ended the inning, and he goes, I think it was a 1-2 pitch, and you could tell it's exactly what he was trying to do. Elevate the ball, upper part of the plate, and the batter just swung right through a 98-mile-an-hour fastball, and you could see what it meant to him as he was, giving the old Tiger.
And finally, they're not hitting this pitch that they've been clobbering for the last 6 weeks, it feels like.
And you felt good for him. And then you sit there and say, if you're a Yankee fan, what could have been? Like, if this was the type of Luis Severino you would have gotten all year, and then it begs the question, what was the problem?
Yeah, but I'll tell you the problem for them is that, number one, they haven't won a series, in 12 series. And number 2, they don't play well against really good teams.
They haven't.
They beat up the bad teams, but, when they see top-end echelon pitching, they don't hit. At all.
That's been a problem for years.
Oh,
now.
yeah. 100% a problem.
We do know. But they do get a win. Judge hits a home run. Severino, fantastic. And for at least one day, the Yankee fan can enjoy a game.
So a couple things that I was thinking about yesterday. One was Hard Knocks tonight.
Yeah.
You looking forward to that?
Yeah, I'm kind of over it.
Really?
I am, because I watched later in the hour, because I watched one Jets drive again yesterday. There have been a lot of similarities between the 2 shows.
Okay.
And I really think this is not a knock on Hard Knocks, because I've enjoyed it as much as I think the Jets production is that good.
Yeah, they do a good job. One of the interesting things when the Jets were finally told that they were doing this, and you go, they're jamming it down our throat. Meanwhile, they're jamming it down the throats of the guys who like to be in front of the camera.
They seem to love it.
They seem to love it, yes. You remember when the Jets said, we're not going to show us cutting anybody?
Yeah.
I finally figured out why that was the case. And maybe it was because they thought it was demeaning or whatever else. But you have to go back to when the Jets, when the Ravens were on Hard Knocks. And the guy that was the Turk, the guy that was telling the player to bring his playbook and cutting him. Do you know who that guy was?
I do not.
Do you know who that guy was, Fleegs?
Joe Douglas.
That's exactly right. And where's been Joe? Joe Douglas is nowhere to be found in any of this. Now, I know he's talking this week to local media, I think on Thursday, but he is basically taking a page out of, and I'm sure he would tell you this because the person I was talking to yesterday was saying the same thing, that where was Ozzie Newsome in any of those? You never saw Ozzie at all with the Ravens. You barely ever saw him. And I think that Joe Douglas has been schooled very well by the great Ozzie Newsome. And now he is basically following the same track that Ozzie did back when Joe was the Turk and he had to cut people. And people saw that on TV, and it wasn't a fun thing for anybody.
Well, I'll give you something after the break, or maybe in the final segment of the hour. A creepy creepy is that the right word?
Creepy.
Weird, a foreshadowing moment from One Jets Drive. I don't know if Mike, I know you watched it. I don't know if you picked up on it. Very interesting, though, having what has happened, and then what was put on film in the show from last night that came out yesterday. So we'll talk about that coming up. We have Peter Schwartz as
Well, I will say one other thing. We got a big problem over at the U.S. Open. Huge problem.
Weed.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
I knew that's where. Is that where you were going?
Oh, yeah.
All right,
listen, we're walking down the streets of Hudson here. We got a problem.
We'll get to Boomer's U.S. Open weed issue coming up.
It was not my issue.
You just said we have a problem.
Well, I mean, we are like being. I don't know. Maybe it's embarrassing for the players, or maybe it's embarrassing for the wafting
of weed
that is overtaking the players as they're playing.
There's also a really interesting story about rats, which we will get to too. I got a whole lot today.
Oh, good. So I'm glad you're totally loaded up.
You know what we have? Here's what I'm telling you we're going to get to at some point. I've got boom scrolling. Because there were a couple of headlines I could not get my eyes off of. All right. We've got boom scrolling, which we will do. We've got guide to tipping. I need help with something because I screwed something up royally.
All right. So we'll get remember, you're a celebrity. You're in the power chair.
We'll get to the rats. Well, whatever.
If you're in the power chair, people have expectations.
Enough with that. Where your ass sits, that's the power chair.
Okay, all right.
Keep telling yourself otherwise.
Whatever.
We'll get to that.
While you're sitting in that chair, you are a number one celebrity, and you have to act accordingly when you're out and you're tipping.
Yeah, well, I screwed one up pretty good. So we'll talk about that. And Peter Schwartz coming up next right here on the Fan and CBS Sports
May
Network.
Schwartz be with you.
Peter. Hello, Peter.
Hello, Peter. All right. Good job.